saw a great big tourist bus.
Welcome to Environmental News and Notes. I'm Marilyn Elie, and today we're looking at a meeting from the Indian Point Safe Energy Coalition, which meets at Stony Point. A lot of people converge there. In fact, we call it the Convergence, once a month. And a lot of work is done looking at Indian Point, figuring out how to close Indian Point, seeing what the options are, and how to move forward. Usually we meet on the first Sunday of the month, and all are welcome. It's on Stony Point's website, it's on our website, so you can always find out the times and dates. And come if you're interested, you'd be most welcome. I am so pleased to announce that the Indian Point Safe Energy Coalition has received a $1,000 donation from Bonnie Raitt. I'm sure that some of you are saying, who is that? Well, others will know that she's quite a prominent, famous musician and singer. She frequently appears at the Beacon Theater in New York City, and some of our members, Gary and Jean particularly, have been going in to table and hand out information at her concert. She has talked to them. They've given her Close Indian Point t-shirts, which she was very happy to have, they reported. And now she's written us a check for $1,000, which is very generous on her part, and we're very grateful for it. Because of that interest that she's expressed, we decided to follow up. And Gary's going to ask her if she would be willing to do a concert for Closing Indian Point. We'll see what she says. She lives on the West Coast, but she is here frequently to perform. So maybe you'll be hearing about that sometime in the spring or in the winter. We don't know yet, but stay tuned for that exciting information. It would be great to have her dedicate a concert to Closing Indian Point. That would really reach a lot of people, and that's what we're trying to do, reach a lot of people. And I hope as you hear these things, you will talk about them, spread the news, and let others know what's new with Closing Indian Point. We're very much interested in reaching out to first responders. If you know any first responders, if you have any connections there, we have a lot of very good material. They're on the Clearwater website. We have a really nice video that we made right after Fukushima that it still, unfortunately, is still very accurate. Lots and lots of problems with the evacuation plan. So if you'd like to get involved and you know some first responders, this is a great way to make a connection. And take a look. Take a look and see what it says in regard to information for first responders. It's a very nice package. I'd like to say thank you to our allies at SAPE. Stop the expansion of the ALGONQUIN pipeline. They've been working very hard to they've gone to Governor Cuomo. They're asking him right now to issue a cease and desist order, and they're very concerned about the pipeline next to Indian Point. And for common sense reasons, all of the engineering and everything else aside, why on earth would you put a 42-inch pipeline next to a nuclear power plant? It's just a recipe for disaster. Our friends at Stony Point, Rick, Alfred Chase, and others did an action not too long ago. You'll be seeing some pictures about that. They were out on the Hudson River in their kayaks and got lined up in front of the shore in their boat. So they were on the river, pipelines on the shore, of course, but they have some great pictures that we hope we can bring to you later. It was a tough day on the river, and so they were very brave to go out and do that. Sometimes when you're an activist, you just sort of grin and bear it and go on. So Rick, thank you for that action. It was not an easy day on the river. He has stories about that. Maybe we'll bring him in and let him tell you some of them. We talked a little bit about what's going on at Diablo Canyon. That's a reactor in California, and there are a lot of people there, just like here, that want to close the reactor in their backyard right away. There's another group that came together with a coalition of some big green environmental groups and the union. So I think that was probably a key issue. They laid out a plan along with the government of California, which is very forward-looking when it comes to energy and electricity, and has decided to close out all of their nuclear plants. They laid out a 9-year plan. And the union was involved. Union workers will be hired for decommissioning. They know the plant. Who better to take it down and safely and do it the right way. So over a 9-year period, that plant will be closed. People who want to close it right away say, well, that's 9 more years of really dangerous activity in earthquake-prone territory, and that's true. So you have to balance the risk. It's not unlike what we will face at Indian Point. There's seismic risk at Indian Point. There's a risk to 20 million people at Indian Point should something go wrong. And yet we do have to consider the economy, the town of Buchanan, which gets all of its tax money from Indian Point, or 99% of it, and the workers' jobs and pensions, and all of that needs to be balanced out. California's doing it over a 9-year period. We'd have to look here to see what would be fair and just for everybody in this region. Something to start thinking about. Okay, decommissioning, and what do you do when you take a nuclear power plant offline? We need to be thinking about that. And NRDC, Natural Defense Resource, is going to be they've already hosted some seminars on decommissioning. They're going to be releasing a report soon. And once that's done, we'll take a look at it and see what we think about it as the Indian Point Safe Energy Coalition, and see what the Convergence thinks about it, and we'll keep you informed. One of the things that we talked about is the fact that just transition is a very loaded term. For most people, it means that people who work at a nuclear power plant will have a job, and there will be some money that comes into the community in order to take care of taxes. To other people, it means that it means a lot of different things. And we've decided, since we've worked so hard to close the plant, that our input probably would not be very welcome, at least in the beginning, as union workers are moving towards a transition as the plant closes. One of the things that would be smart, and that they're doing at reactors around the country, especially Diablo Canyon, is that they're hiring the workers there to go forward with decommissioning. So our goal would be a rapid decommissioning. You don't put it in what the NRC calls safe store. You start decommissioning it right away, not waiting 20 years. Who knows what will happen to the company by then. And the price only goes up as everything else does. So you put it in a rapid decommissioning mode. You hire those same workers who know the plant. That would make a lot of sense. It would be much more sensible, and decommissioning takes a long time. So it would be a gradual fade out, and people would have a chance to get their affairs in order, and maybe some people would reach retirement, whatever. It would just give a softer landing to closing an industrial facility like Indian Point. But we're really not going to be calling it, we're not going to work for the just transition, because, as I say, it is a loaded term. What we're going to do is we're going to work for renewables, and it will be transitioning to renewables. That's what we're going to start talking about quite a bit. And we do have an energy sufficiency. We talked a lot about that at our meeting. Our grid has more than enough electricity. People think electricity is scarce. It's not. It's a big business. Lots of companies are generators, and they're generating a lot of electricity. So we really have a sufficiency. All of the experts agree on that, including the independent systems operators. So we're going to be talking about energy sufficiency and not replacement energy. Indian Point's already been replaced. We don't need to replace it. It's already happened. The marketplace took care of that. So you could close Indian Point right now, and life would go on just as normal for the grid and for all of us who want electricity when we flip our switches to turn things on. There was a recent event in New York City that is really worth noting. Some of our people went there. It was involved with Patagonia, the company, the camping company, and Riverkeeper. They worked on this together. Paul Goulet was a brilliant speaker, as he usually is. He's the executive director of Riverkeeper. And they had John Bowermaster there, who's noted for his short environmental films. He has a series about the Hudson River and danger on the Hudson River. You'll see the links to those films are on his website, and you'll see them on our screen so that you can look at them too. But the one that that I want to focus on or mention is the one on Indian Point. It's 5 minutes long, well worth watching, and I hope that you will take a note of the website and go there and take a look at it. It's interesting to note that Patagonia is not a public public company, they're private. So it's owned by a family, as I understand it, and they have taken a stand against Indian Point. They have two stores in the city, and the uptown one, as soon as you walk in, you see a big display about closing Indian Point. So it's huge, and it's accurate, it's factual, and if you go in that store, spend some time looking at it and find their environmental director. They have one. This corporation has an environmental director who knows a lot about Indian Point. Tell them that you think that's a good idea and that you're glad they're supporting closing Indian Point. I certainly was, and they did a fine program. And who knows, maybe they'll do some more. Go see the film, spend 5 minutes watching it, and see what John Bowermaster has to say. We also talked about the Clean Energy Standard. The Clean Energy Standard was quite well done and thought out of until Governor Cuomo decided he wanted to add something extra. And that extra thing is called Tier 3. Tier 3 is it's a nuclear tax is what it is. Not for Indian Point yet, but it's a subsidy, a tax for 3 reactors in upstate New York. 9 Mile reactor, Ginna and Fitzpatrick are all in a big deal because they're failing in the marketplace. They can't sell their electricity at enough of a profit to make it worth their while to stay in business. And evidently the governor thought that would, closing those 3 reactors all at one time, would really make a big hole in the upstate economy. He was afraid of the loss of jobs, probably afraid of the loss of votes. He is a politician. So he instructed the Public Service Commission to add Tier 3. Now that calls for a $7.4 billion subsidy over quite a few years, I think 11, 12 years, to those 3 corporations, not to the workers, but to the corporations. We are paying failing nuclear plants to stay in business, to generate more long-term waste, so that people can work. People need to work. But I think it would be better to give them the money. It's a lot of money, all those billions, rather than to corporations. So there's a movement afoot, particularly in the state legislature. The state legislators, some of them have gotten together, and they're writing the governor and saying, our constituents downstate New York is going to be paying 60% of this tax. We don't use 60% of the electricity generated. This is not fair. It is not fair to tax the whole state of New York in order to keep 3 outmoded, failing, outdated nuclear reactors working. Find another way to take care of the jobs. Do it like they did in California. Bring the unions in, make changes, and move on to green energy. So you'll be hearing more about this. Food and Water Watch and NYPIRG, 2 very big environmental organizations, are doing an outreach right now. So if you have a NYPIRG, one of those nice NYPIRG students knocking on your door, please be very kind to him or her and listen to what they have to say and sign their petition and throw a few bucks their way. They're working for the good of us all. There are just 2 other things here I think I want to mention. One is that I spent some time in California. I'm not going to talk about that trip yet. You'll see that on another program. But I am so impressed with their attitude towards environment and towards electricity and energy use. Those 2 things are very, very bound up together. Electricity use and transportation are our 2 biggest factors in creating greenhouse gases. What they do is they look and say, what's the common good? They're really interested in putting money back in low-income communities so that everybody can enjoy the benefits of conservation and just seeing how they can do it for the whole state. It's really remarkable, and I'll be glad to talk about that in another show. I'll share one more resource with you, and that's David Lochbaum. If you don't know David, please look him up. He's a very acerbic writer. He's very funny. He's not anti-nuclear, but he's a safety engineer. He's a nuclear safety engineer. He has a blog, and he was talking about reorganizing that's going on within the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. It's noteworthy because they are cutting back on their Department of New Reactors, and the reason they're doing that is because this whole nuclear renaissance that was foretold fell on its face and flopped, frankly. New reactors are not being built, so they're cutting back on that department, and they're increasing the employees in the decommissioning part of their regulatory body of the commission. So I think that's quite telling in for the current state of nuclear power. So I hope you'll be able to join us at Stony Point. It's at 17 Cricket Town Road is the address in Stony Point, New York, right across the Bear Mountain Bridge. Not hard to find at all, beautiful campus. And we would welcome you to our monthly meetings, the first Sunday, 1:30, first Sunday of the month. So I hope to see you there.
I saw a great big tourist bus of folks from out of town. For 40 days and 40 nights, they covered miles of ground. They had a map and compass, but they still were not arriving. Oh, they couldn't get to Pleasantville, so they kept on driving.